They called me the shield of Troy, the man who could never fall. But when the gods sent Achilles to my gates, I knew my death had already begun. I wasn't fighting for glory. I was fighting to keep my son from growing up in ashes. And when I finally stood before Achilles, I realized honor means nothing to the gods. This is how it felt, to be Hector. I stand upon the walls of Troy as the sun bleeds into the horizon, painting the heavens the color of old wounds. The stone beneath my feet is warm from another day of death, and the wind carries ash from funeral pyres that never stop burning. They call me savior, protector, the shield of Troy. But when I close my eyes, all I see are the faces of men I could not save. My armor weighs heavier with each passing day, not from iron, but from the weight of 1,000 prayers whispered at my back. Women clutch their children when I pass, their eyes bright with desperate faith. Old men bow their heads and murmur blessings. They believe I am invincible. They believe the gods favor me. They are wrong. I am only a man, flesh that bleeds, bone that breaks, a heart that grows more tired with every sunrise that refuses to bring peace. Hector. Her voice finds me in the gathering dark. Andromache moves through the shadows like a ghost of the life I wish we could have lived. She reaches for my hand and I feel the calluses on her fingers, rough from worry, from nights spent weaving prayers into cloth while I dance with death below these walls. You haven't eaten, she says softly. Neither have half the city. Then starve with them inside our home, not out here where you pretend the stone will hold if you stare at it long enough. I almost smile. Almost. The stone will hold as long as I'm standing on it. And when you fall, her fingers tighten around mine. Every victory you bring us steals a piece of your heart, my love. One day there will be nothing left but duty, and duty makes a poor husband. I pull her close, breathing in the scent of olive oil and sorrow. Beyond the walls, Greek campfires spread across the plain like fallen stars, a constellation of our doom. I am still yours, I whisper against her hair. Every piece that remains. But even as I say it, I feel the truth of her words. Each battle strips away another fragment of the man who laughed freely, who dreamed of growing old with her, who believed honor and courage could change fate's course. Inside the palace, my father, King Priam, burns incense and consults oracles, who speak in riddles designed to comfort rather than illuminate. He clings to prophecies the way a drowning man clings to driftwood, desperately, uselessly. The gods who once blessed Troy now watch us with the cold curiosity of children observing ants beneath a glass. And Paris, my brother, the spark that lit this funeral pyre, he walks the halls with Helen on his arm, beautiful and blind to the blood his desire has cost. He speaks of love as if love justifies 10,000 graves. I have stopped trying to reason with him. Some men are born to destroy and they call it destiny, but the whispers have begun. In the markets, between the clang of hammers and the wail of widows, soldiers speak a name with religious dread. Achilles. They say he is blessed, that his mother dipped him in divine waters and made him untouchable, that he fights with the fury of storms given human form, that he has never known defeat, that he kills not from necessity, but from hunger, an appetite for glory that can only be fed with legendary corpses. They say the gods love him. At night, alone in the temple where no one can see their commander's fear, I pray to those same gods. I do not ask for victory. I do not ask for peace. I ask only that our paths never cross, that he might find his glory elsewhere, that fate might be satisfied with smaller sacrifices. But the gods, I am learning, do not answer prayers born from hope. They only answer prayers born from blood. And high above, in halls of gold where mortals are merely pieces in games we cannot comprehend, divine hands are already moving, setting their stage, writing the final act of a tragedy that began the moment Paris looked at Helen and called his lust love. The sun vanishes completely now, and Troy stands in shadow. Still proud, still defiant, still doomed. I am Hector, Prince of Troy, and I stand upon these walls because someone must, because duty demands it, because love requires it, because when the gods send their champion to break us, Someone will have to stand in his way, even if that someone is only a man. The siege becomes a slow starvation of the soul. Months bleed into each other like wounds that refuse to heal. The Greek ships multiply on our shores like a plague of locusts, and each dawn brings only the promise of more death beneath an indifferent sky. Inside Troy's walls, the rot spreads. I walk through the lower city where children with hollow eyes watch me pass, their bellies swollen from eating anything. Leather, grass, hope ground into paste. Their mothers no longer beg for food. They have learned that silence requires less strength than speech. But climb the hill to the palace district, and you will find nobles draped in silk, their tables groaning under roasted meats, while they debate which wine pairs best with quail. Gold accumulates in their vaults like a dragon's hoard, while men die with rust on their swords because the royal treasury will not pay for new bronze. I have stopped attending my father's councils. King Priam sits on his throne, ancient and afraid, listening to priests read omens in the entrails of birds. They tell him what he wants to hear, that the gods are testing our faith, that victory awaits the righteous, that Troy will endure as it always has. He believes them because belief is easier than action. And Paris, my brother, wears his shame like borrowed glory. He walks the palace gardens with Helen, composing poetry about her eyes while soldiers compose letters to children they will never see again. He speaks of destiny and divine love, as if the gods ordained this slaughter for the sake of his satisfaction. I want to hate him. Some days I almost do, but hatred is a luxury I cannot afford. It requires energy I need for the next battle, the next funeral, the next moment I must stand before broken men and convince them their sacrifice means something. At night, I lie beside Andromache and dream of running. I see us on a ship sailing far from this cursed shore. Her, me, little Astyanax with his mother's eyes and my stubborn chin. We would find some island where no one knows the name Troy, where war is a story told by old men, not a hunger that devours generations. We could leave, I whisper into the darkness. Before dawn, just disappear. Her hand finds mine. The walls would fall within a week. Let them fall. Let Paris defend what Paris destroyed. You don't mean that. She's right. I don't. That is my curse. I cannot abandon what I was born to protect, even when protection has become merely postponing the inevitable. The walls will not hold without me. Not because I am the greatest warrior, but because I am the only one left who fights for something beyond glory or gold. Then one morning, everything changes. He enters the battlefield like a storm given human form. Achilles, the golden terror, the blessed killer. I watch from the walls as he carves through our lines with the casual brutality of a farmer harvesting wheat. Men I trained, men I ate with, men whose children call me uncle. They fall before him like prayers that go unanswered. His armor catches the sun and turns it into accusation. This is what divinity looks like, it seems to say. This is what mortals face when they defy fate. Polydamas rides out to challenge him, my friend, my brother in all but blood, a man whose laughter once made even war feel bearable. The duel lasts less than a minute. Achilles kills him with the efficiency of someone swatting a fly, then drags his body behind his chariot in circles around our walls, around and around until my friend becomes an abstract smear in the dust, until he is no longer a man, but a message. This is what awaits you all. Something inside me breaks clean. Not my courage, I have never lacked that. Not my resolve, duty has calcified my spine into steel. What breaks is the last fragment of mercy, the piece that still believed this war might end in something other than ashes and anguish. I am done praying for peace. The gods want their confrontation, they shall have it. That night, I sharpen my sword until the edge could split a falling hair. Andromache watches from the doorway, silent as grief. He will kill you, she finally says. Perhaps. Not perhaps, certainly. I test the blade against my thumb, watch blood well up like a prophecy. Then he will have to earn it. She crosses the room and grips my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. Polydamas was not worth your life. No, but Troy is. Our son is. The idea that honor still means something in a world where gods play with us like broken toys, that is worth my life. I see the moment she understands. This is not about revenge. This is about the only choice I have left, to meet fate standing, rather than cowering behind walls while it devours everything I love piece by piece. She kisses me then, tasting of salt and sorrow. Then make them remember, she whispers. Make them remember what it cost to break you. I will. By all the gods who watch and do nothing, I will. For 3 days the battlefield lies silent. Achilles has withdrawn, not in defeat but in rage. The Greek kings quarrel like children over stolen toys, and their greatest weapon sulks in his tent while lesser men bleed for Agamemnon's pride. I should feel nothing but relief. Instead, I feel the hollow dread of a condemned man granted a brief reprieve, knowing the executioner still sharpens his blade. Then, on the 4th morning, I see him. Golden armor blazing in the sun, that unmistakable silhouette charging at the head of the Greek forces. My heart turns to stone in my chest. He has returned. The Trojans around me falter, their courage bleeding away like water through cracked clay. But I grip my spear tighter and roar orders that sound braver than I feel. If this is the day fate demands payment, I will not let my men see me tremble. The battle is chaos rendered visible, a screaming tangle of bronze and flesh and dust thick enough to choke on. And through it all, that golden figure cuts toward me like destiny wearing armor. I meet him in the space between armies, where individual combat becomes the only truth that matters. Our first exchange is thunder and lightning compressed into the span of heartbeats. He fights with Achilles' legendary fury, but something is wrong. His movements are skilled yet cautious, powerful yet somehow hesitant. When my spear finds the gap beneath his breastplate, he falls with a sound that is too human, too fragile. I tear away his helmet. The face that stares up at me is not Achilles, Patroclus, his companion, his beloved friend wearing borrowed divinity like a costume. I thought, he whispers, blood bubbling at his lips, I thought I could be him. Then the light leaves his eyes, and I am holding not a demigod but simply a young man who believed in legends too much, and in his own mortality too little. Around me, Troy erupts in celebration. Soldiers embrace, citizens pour from the gates weeping with joy. They think I have killed the unkillable. They think the war is won. Fools. Beautiful, doomed fools. I stand over Patroclus's body and feel the future crystallize into terrible certainty. I have not ended anything, I have begun the ending. That night, Troy feasts while I sit alone in the temple, staring at gods carved from stone who stare back with the same indifference they show the living. I did not want this, I tell them, though I know they do not listen. I wanted only to protect what was mine. The marble eyes offer no comfort, no absolution. When I finally return home, Andromache takes one look at my face and understands. "What have you done?" she asks, though it is not accusation, only grief. I killed the wrong man. That night I dream, and the dream is prophecy dressed as nightmare. Troy burns. Every tower, every home, every street I walked as a child, consumed by flames that roar like divine laughter. I search for Andromache through the smoke but find only shadows and screams. Then the dream shifts and I am running. Not toward battle, but away from it. My legs pump desperately, but the ground slides beneath me like I am running through water. Behind me something approaches, not pursuing, but inevitable as sunrise. I turn, and there he is. Achilles, transformed into something beyond human. His eyes are empty of everything except wrath, and his hands are painted red to the elbows. I try to fight, but my spear shatters against his shield. My sword breaks against his armor. In the end, I am simply a man, and he is the answer to every prayer I should never have spoken. When his blade finds my throat, I do not feel pain. Only the rope being tied around my ankles. Only the lurch as his chariot begins to move. And then I am being dragged through the dust, past the walls I swore to defend, while my people watch their hope die one agonizing circle at a time. I wake gasping, drenched in sweat that feels like blood. Andromache's hand is on my chest. You were screaming. I saw tomorrow, I whisper, and we are not in it. She pulls me close, and we lie there in the darkness, two mortals clinging to each other while gods above arrange their entertainment. Somewhere beyond our walls, Achilles mourns his friend. And in that mourning, he is forging something far more terrible than grief. He is forging my death. Night falls on Troy like a burial shroud. The walls still stand. The towers still pierce the darkening sky. But something fundamental has been torn from the city's chest, and what remains is merely stone and wood, animated by the memory of life. In the palace temple, King Priam kneels before altars that have gone cold. His hands, liver-spotted and trembling, arrange offerings that will never be accepted. Wine that pools like blood. Incense that rises like prayers into an empty heaven. Why? He whispers to gods who have turned their faces away. What more do you want from us? The marble deities stare past him with eyes that have witnessed empires rise and fall with the same bland curiosity. They wanted nothing. They simply watched while mortals destroyed themselves, the way children watch ants drown in rain. His greatest son is dead. His city's heart has stopped beating. And still Priam kneels, because faith is all he has left, even if it is faith in something that never loved him back. Across the city, in chambers that now feel too large, Andromache stands at the window holding Astyanax against her chest. The boy sleeps, innocent and unaware that he is the son of a ghost, that his father will never return to lift him laughing into the air. She does not weep. There are no tears left. They dried on the walls this morning, watching Achilles drag Hector's body through the dust until the man she loved became an unrecognizable thing, until Troy's protector became Troy's final humiliation. On the horizon, Greek campfires burn like stars fallen to earth. They are celebrating, drinking, singing songs about divine Achilles who defeated the Trojan champion, who proved that gods triumph over men, that glory outweighs love, that might erases right. Let them celebrate. Andromache holds her son tighter and remembers Hector's last words to her, spoken in darkness just hours before dawn took him forever. If I fall, he had said, teach our son that his father was not a hero. Heroes cannot lose. Tell him I was simply a man who stood when standing was all he had left to give. The city breathes around her, but it is the breath of something dying. Without Hector, there is no center, no spine, no beating heart to keep the body alive. Soldiers will still man the walls. Priests will still perform rituals. Life will continue in the mechanical way that corpses sometimes twitch. But Troy's soul died this morning in the dust. Somewhere beyond these walls, Achilles polishes his legend. Bards are already composing epics about his glory, his divine strength, his inevitable triumph. They will sing of him for 1,000 years, and the songs will make children dream of bronze and blood. But I wonder, in those songs, in those endless retellings of his greatness, will anyone remember the man he killed? Not Hector the warrior, not Hector the prince, just Hector. The husband who held his wife like she was the only solid thing in a world of smoke. The father who laughed at his son's first clumsy steps. The commander who learned every soldier's name because he believed that men fight harder for someone who sees them as human. Will they remember that he fought not for glory, but because love left him no choice? That he faced divine wrath with mortal courage, knowing he would lose, because losing with honor meant more than winning through cowardice? Achilles will have his fame, eternal, blazing, worshipped by those who mistake violence for virtue. But Hector will have something Achilles can never possess, the sorrow of those who loved him truly, not for what he could do, but for who he was. I was the protector of Troy. I fought for a city that could not be saved, and for a love the gods would not allow. I stood between fate and my family, knowing I could not win, knowing I would be destroyed, but standing nonetheless because that is what it means to be human, in a world ruled by the divine. Let them sing of Achilles and his glory. But remember, it was I who faced him when no one else would. Not because I was the strongest, but because I was all that stood between darkness and everything I loved. And when they ask what became of Troy's defender, tell them this: he fell. But he fell forward. Years pass like water through broken hands. Troy falls just as the prophets foretold. The wooden horse, the flames, the screams that echo through eternity. Astyanax is murdered, thrown from the walls by men who fear the son of Hector more than they fear the judgment of history. Andromache is taken as a slave, her grief becoming the property of her captors. The city that stood for 10 years crumbles in a single night. But something strange happens in the centuries that follow. Achilles gets his immortality, his name carved into legend, sung by poets, whispered with reverence. Statues are raised in his honor. Kings claim descent from his bloodline. He becomes what he always wanted: eternal, invincible, divine. Yet when people speak his name, it tastes of bronze and ashes, of glory purchased with cruelty, of fame built on desecrated corpses. But Hector becomes something else entirely. Mothers name their sons after him, praying they inherit his courage tempered with compassion. Soldiers invoke him not for victory, but for the strength to do what is right when everything is wrong. Lovers whisper his story to remind themselves that honor exists even in hopeless causes. He becomes the patron saint of lost battles and noble failures, of those who stand not because they can win, but because someone must stand. This is the cruel mercy of human memory. We remember not the strongest, but the most human. Not the conqueror, but the defender. Not the one who could not lose, but the one who could not abandon. Achilles achieved immortality through violence. Hector achieved it through love. And there, in that distinction, lies the eternal truth that gods and demigods can never comprehend. That the measure of a life is not in its triumphs, but in what it was willing to sacrifice. Not in how it conquered, but in what it chose to protect when protection was futile. Honor without mercy becomes sacrifice. Hector learned this when he faced Achilles, knowing death was inevitable, yet went anyway because his city needed him to. Duty without hope becomes martyrdom. He learned this watching Troy rot from within while still defending its walls, choosing obligation over escape, responsibility over survival. But martyrdom is not tragedy if it transforms into meaning. And Hector's death meant everything. It meant that in a world manipulated by capricious gods and corrupted by selfish men, one person still chose righteousness. That between fate's grinding wheels and love's fragile flame, humanity could still matter. Achilles was inevitable, a force of nature dressed in gold, unstoppable as sunrise, as impersonal as winter. Hector was choice, the decision to love in a loveless world, to fight for the doomed, to believe that how we fall matters more than whether we stand. The gods set their stage and wrote their story, but Hector rewrote the ending simply by being himself, flawed, exhausted, terrified, and unbending. Centuries later, poets still weep writing his name. That is the immortality that matters. Not the glory of the unkillable warrior, but the sorrow of the man who died defending what he loved, making sacred through his sacrifice what fate had condemned. Achilles will always be remembered, but Hector will always be mourned. And in the architecture of human memory, mourning lasts longer than marvel. This is his victory, not that he defeated Achilles, but that he faced him. Not that he saved Troy, but that he tried. Not that he overcame fate, but that he made fate earn its cruel reward. He fell, but the fall echoed through eternity.